Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Review. Alongside Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Great to have you with us. Bill, Mother Nature tried to rain on the parade.
Right.
But, as I've said all along, one of the greatest investments Anne Arundel County Recreation and Parks ever made was building these turf fields, because it was they that built the turf fields, not the Board of Education. It was the Anne Arundel County Recreation and Parks that built these turf fields for the high schools. Because of that, because of a prompt and I think forward-thinking decision to play those games at 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, you had some semblance of quality, obviously, to those games. None more than Annapolis's striking comeback down 28-14 to Arundel. They come back, win the game 30-28. You look at the final numbers for Arundel, and outside of a team named Old Mill, it's been a while since you've seen an Arundel team put up that kind of number offensively. Give Annapolis a lot of credit. Nick Goodmalloy has gotten the Panthers back into that upper echelon now of Anne Arundel County teams.
Well, I feel bad for Arundel, obviously. We love Chuck Markowitz. We don't want to see his team lose, but this is good for Anne Arundel County. It's good. Annapolis High has always been one of the premier programs in Anne Arundel County, and they've been down for quite a while now. Basically, since Roy Brown left as head coach, they've been through Dale Castro and Brian Brown, and now Nick Goodmalloy has come back and provided the continuity they need. He's gone back to some of the staples of Annapolis High football, which wing T, number one, running the football, and he's got them playing good ball. And that is a huge win for Annapolis, just a real program maker, something you can really hang your hat on. They've got some good athletes, Panthers, this year. I mean, we've talked about them all season.
I mean, for the most part, always have had the good athletes in the building. When you're a larger school like that, you do have a decent amount of kids to choose from. It's a matter of the kids making the commitment in the classroom and on the field. More importantly, continuity at the coaching position here with
Right.
Nick, a former Panther himself. So he's got, he feels the blue, red, and white over there at Annapolis, and I think that's part of it as well. You got a guy that is well entrenched in the community. He believes in the high school itself, and Montez Davis continues to have an outstanding year.
Caught one, ran for one,
and had 130 yards running on the ground. And again, I go back to the defense, and even though Arundel, obviously you look up, has 28 points, but I mean, Deontay Thompson has only 102 passing. Larry Barnes was held under 100 yards rushing. So to me, those are the two largest numbers in the contest, in addition to the fact that they erase a big deficit. They actually played some defense against Arundel, which many people often don't do.
And a lot of firsts. It's been the first time that Annapolis has beaten Arundel in something like 7, 8, 9 years. Arundel has not lost 2 back-to-back Anne Arundel County football games in about 5 or 6 years. So very rare. I mean, I think when everybody picked up their newspaper on Saturday morning and saw Annapolis beat Arundel, that was kind of the surprise of the season to date.
Every time we look up and see Broadneck continuing to win, we look at their opening season loss to South River and are puzzled by it, because the Seahawks lost to Glen Burnie this week. Gophers pick up their first win of the season. Demi Ajakundo with 168 yards and a couple of scores, and Adekunjo leading the Gophers to their first victory of the season, while Broadneck, you talk about expanding the package. Ali'i Niumatalolo, not only on defense, but Billy taking a swing pass this week and scoring a touchdown from Emmett Davis. So good to see him getting some touches on the offensive side of the ball. That is the team right now that really seems to be on the come. And they've obviously got a couple of key dates here before the season is over with as well. One with Old Mill.
Arundel this coming week.
Yeah, and Arundel this week. I mean, these are going to be some interesting collisions that are coming up here. What I think we're also seeing is 6-4, 7-3 might get you the 4th spot now in the 4A East this year.
As you mentioned, Annapolis has thrust themselves into that discussion. Broadneck has definitely come together. Rob Harris is a good coach. The Broadneck always gets better as the season goes along. I know how disappointing they were last year to go undefeated during the regular season and promptly lose in the playoffs. I think they have some redemption. A lot of the players feel they need to redeem themselves for that. Got to ask Ken Niumatalolo, the Navy head coach, when's the last time a Niumatalolo scored a touchdown? Got to feel good the kid's an outside linebacker, an inside linebacker his whole career, and they put him on offense and he scores a touchdown. Feels good. And, Emmett Davis, the quarterback's been playing really well. They're looking good. And, Arundel, this is a huge game. Arundel's got 2 straight losses. They're playing Broadneck. I believe it's at Broadneck. I'm almost positive it's hosted at Broadneck. That could be a third. When's the last time Arundel lost 3 straight games in the county?
You definitely have to look that up. But, you look at the math, you're starting to see Old Mill obviously at the top of the region with North Point. Then you're going to have what appears to be Annapolis, Broadneck, Arundel. Somebody's going to be the odd team out. You still, looking at the math, depending on how this game comes out next week, I mean, that loss to South River is still somewhat of a albatross for Broadneck in terms of the point total, depending. Now, they could do something about it head-to-head here. They beat Annapolis, which is obviously, huge for them in that respect. And obviously this means so much against Arundel this week that if they can win that game, they put themselves in pretty good fashion in my mind. But still, that you could end up 7-3 in that 4th spot, which has normally been not good enough, depending on how things have shaken out with the math, the way the state pitches their point system. Give a big tip of the cap to John Forster and Ryan Kennedy on that Broadneck defense too. They both had 1.5 sacks in the victory over Meade, 27-0. And clearly the Mustangs have taken a step back. They've tried to completely change the philosophy, the offense of the team, and it's just been very inconsistent and just not able to play that kind of football. You're not going to run the football down a team like Broadneck's throat. No.
Well, and Albert Jones, the new head coach at Meade, who's been at North County, is now in his first season at Meade, said 2 things killed him in that game. Penalties, committed a slew of penalties, and they couldn't protect their quarterback.
Yep.
They got themselves into some obvious passing situations, and Broadneck brought the house, and that's what Rob Harris said, with Nehemiah Talola, and they've got a transfer student who apparently is playing very well, who's also kind of bringing pressure off the edge. So, yeah, Broadneck's defense always been solid under Rob Harris, who was the defensive coordinator under former head coach Jeff Herrick.
Old Mill wins again. Everybody just kind of yawned.
Yep. Pete Boone, another big game, just keeps rumbling.
Miles Gaither sets the tone early for them with an offensive touchdown and a defensive touchdown as well, as they win by a count of 30-6 over Chesapeake. North County gets a win. They knock off Southern 14-6 in that one. Amaggio Evans with a 24-yard run, and also Dontavian Holman had a fumble return for a touchdown from 18 yards out in the early going of that game to set the tone for North County in that contest. And give Severna Park a lot of credit. The team built over the last couple of weeks, played some really, really good defense. Falcons beat Northeast by a score of 15-2. Joe Jennings, 70 yards and a score. Jackson Neal also having a real good ball game for the Falcons. This is a team over the last couple of weeks, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. It's very awkward for the Falcons this year. They don't have their own field at their own school to practice with. They got to load everybody up, go over to Kinder Park to practice. They're playing their home games at Northeast and Old Mill, depending on who's not at home that particular weekend. So there's nothing easy about this for the Falcons. They've settled down and done a really, really good job here of late.
They've only allowed 6 points in the last 14 quarters, playing outstanding defense. They got first-year head coach over there, Dave Lanham, the athletic director, brought one of his former Meade guys who used to be on Rich Holzer's staff over. And they're playing pretty good ball, but now you mentioned also these last 3 games that they've won, Northeast, Southern, they've got to step up and beat someone of significance. So, they've got some games down the road where they can really step up and say, hey, we are back, Severna Park.
All right, on the private school side, Severn lost Saturday to John Carroll, 42-13. Thursday, Spalding, another solid performance. Mike Mancuso, big play defensively, breaking up a pass in the red zone. Evan Fuckman, 78-yard run for Spalding. They rout Loyola 34-13, and again, that's another club right there playing some really good football right now as they're starting to get into the meat of their A-Conference schedule.
Head coach Kyle Smith has the team going well, 5-1. Look out, Spalding. He's done a good job, I think, as he's talking about a coach who's now in his 3rd season at Spalding and is starting to settle in and running his systems, got the players doing what he wants, and this is shaping up to be an outstanding season for Spalding. Obviously some big games ahead. Gilman, McDonough have been the class of the A-Conference. Calvert Hall's not an easy game. The Mount St. Joseph. But Gilman just laid it on Mount St. Joseph this past week.
I think Gilman's in a different rent district
different
right
stratosphere,
now. Yeah, I mean, that program's in a completely different place in the A-Conference than everybody else is right now. St. Mary's, we taped this show on Sunday night. St. Mary's will play St. Paul's. That game moved to Monday at 4 o'clock as a result the poor weather from this past weekend, and a chance there for St. Mary's. I mean, St. Paul's only won one game so far this year, Bill. So
Severn beat them.
It's a great chance here for St. Mary's to really continue what's been a good start to the season for the Saints.
Right. Well, I think they can be a factor in the B Conference. I think they've proven that already.
Most of the youth football schedule this weekend wiped out by the weather. Saturday's weather, some of the games had been moved to turf, but again, having people out in that weather on Saturday, and the games that would have had to still been played on grass fields, those would have been a complete disaster. That's why those games were postponed, and obviously they will be made up before the end of the regular season. We'll talk about more of that youth football action on next week's program. Coming up, we'll talk colleges. Bill and I were in Annapolis as Keenan Reynolds and the Navy midshipmen befuddled Air Force to a tune of 33-11, and the Maryland Terrapins.
Whoa.
Where are they? Where did they go? Did they get lost on I-70 coming back from West Virginia? We'll talk about that when we return on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back to the Gridiron Review as Navy gets a big 33-11 win over the Air Force Academy. Bill Lake won the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. And, you know, ironically, if you'd have told us before the game that Keenan Reynolds would not score a rushing touchdown, you probably thought the score might have been reversed. All he did was account for over 300 yards of total offense, throw a touchdown pass, set up two more with a couple of big long runs. And the Mids sitting at 4-0 now, heading to South Bend next week for a matchup with Notre Dame.
Huge win for Navy. This is the one the seniors wanted the most. Lost to Air Force last year, a very disheartening loss out in Colorado Springs. Did not play well. Turnovers, penalties, mistakes. And they lost the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, got taken out to Colorado Springs. And this victory here means a good chance that Navy will bring that very coveted piece of hardware back to Annapolis and need to beat Army on December 12th to close out the deal. Great performance all around. The Navy defense, Pete, we've been talking about the Navy offense so much for the last X amount of years. During this time in which they've had winning records in 11 of 12 seasons, it's all about triple option offense. This might be the best Navy defense that I have seen during this current triple option era. What do you think?
I think somebody asked me about this yesterday, and I think the question in my mind is, while the defense has had some terrific individual players through the years, guys like David Mahoney, Jabari Tawani. I'm not sure if there's been a group of 11 that has played together. I'm not sure there's been a front seven that has played together the way this group has. Look at how many guys they've been using, Bill. The depth,
I wrote a story about that.
The quality of the depth right now. I mean, Mike Kelly comes out of nowhere yesterday.
They've started three different guys at that outside linebacker position.
But I think, and Kenny brought up a good point during the week. We were talking, Omar and I were talking to him about the fact that you look at the depth chart at outside linebacker, every guy is 6'3" or 6'4".
Yep.
You got these big rangy athletes, except for Mike Kelly. But Kenny said, well, Mike Kelly might be the smartest football guys out of that whole group, and he showed it yesterday. His eye discipline was fantastic in that game, containing the outside. Air Force never got anything consistently going on the ground. They turned the football over quite a bit. Their pitch mechanic looked terrible in that contest, and as a result, Navy takes the game 33-11. They do the job, and 7 explosive plays of 26 yards or more for the Mids in that contest is the difference in the game. And now they at least put themselves in position. They're getting votes in the top 25. If they win next week in South Bend, they'll be in the top 25.
That'll wake up a lot of people.
But I'm telling you, I'm watching Notre Dame play Clemson, and I know Notre Dame had to come from way behind to get into the game. They missed the 2-point conversion at the end to lose 24-22. But my gosh, they've got some team speed.
Right, well,
they've got some people who can fly. I mean,
they always have dominant athletes.
They're using 5 or 6 different wide receivers, plus the running back Procise out of the backfield is a former wide receiver. They have got some ridiculous team speed. Navy will have to combat that. Maybe you hope there's a little hangover from that, but we'll see. I mean,
it'll be a tough challenge.
At least Navy puts themselves in position for the opportunity now.
Right.
They could be 5-0, and that would be ridiculous heading into a bye week for the midshipmen. Maryland, on the other hand, I kind of felt this was going to happen. I thought Jim Harbaugh and Michigan's performance the week before against BYU was bad news for Maryland. Maryland's struggling on offense. They may go to Dax Garman next week against Ohio State.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, by the way, Dax, your first start's going to be against Ohio State.
Yeah, congratulations.
Good luck. Not that Ohio State has been great, because they've been struggling for Ohio State standards, had to withstand a late charge from Indiana in Bloomington to stay undefeated. But, I mean, right now, when you don't have the quarterback playing well, you cannot win at this level of college football. You can't.
Right. Well, they don't have a good quarterback. That's been proven. They gave Perry Hills a shot. He didn't do anything. They've given Caleb Rowe a shot. He's an interception machine. I cannot believe how many interceptions this kid throws. And then Dax Garman's gotten his opportunity in the last 2 games. He's been brought in to relieve Caleb Rowe and hasn't done anything. So it's just an offensive. I mean, they did nothing offensively against Michigan. Nothing. Could not run less than 100 yards passing for the first time in years. Something like 50 rushing yards. I mean, they don't have a running game or a passing game. And already the talk has begun about Randy Edsall's future. When the Baltimore Sun sends a columnist out there to start the speculation, it only grows louder. You've lost to Bowling Green at home. Now you just got undressed by West Virginia, big time out in Morgantown. You get shut out and look terrible against Michigan. And Ohio State's going to be ugly. Let's just admit it. That Maryland is not going to be competitive in that game. I'd be shocked if that game is 3 touchdowns. And so as the losses pile up and it looks like Maryland's not competitive, there can be further questions about whether Randy Edsall is going to be fired.
Again, I've said all along, I'm not sure it's necessarily him, but Maryland, I think, has to, again, grasp where it is in the landscape of college football. I mean, you can't keep the best players in state. If you don't keep the best players in state, then that's half the battle right there. If the best players in your state are leaving to go other places, but it's always been like that in Maryland. Outside of when Bobby Ross was there and had more consistent success, they've always lost the best players in the state to other places. And if you don't keep those guys around, that makes it that much more difficult. I have said steadfastly all along, Mike Locksley, terrific recruiter. As an offensive coordinator, I think you could question how this group has performed underneath of him. He's a great recruiting coordinator. I'm not sure how great of an offensive coordinator he has proven to be, because you brought those players in, so you should know how they play. You're the recruiting coordinator. Right. You should know what skills they have, what strengths they have. Set your offense up to those strengths. I'm not sure Maryland is doing that right now. I don't necessarily think that's on Randy as much as it is Mike Locksley, because I think you have to have Locksley because of what he can do for you in the recruiting game.
The shame of it is that Maryland has finally appeared to crack the nut with the local recruiting. They've got this, DMV, lock down the DMV movement going on, and they have gotten a lot of good local recruits. Tino Ellis, the wide receiver at DeMatha, Lolo Harrison, the tailback at DeMatha. We've mentioned on the show the quarterback from Haskins, Dwayne Haskins. So they've seemed to have unlocked things a little bit locally, but it may be too little, too late for Randy Edsall.
See, I think that if they fire Randy, I think that's when you do not have continuity. I think that you're setting the program back another couple of years by running out another coach.
And who actually wants to come coach Maryland at this point?
Well, Nick Saban ain't coming through that door. Maryland fans, unfortunately, think their job is probably higher on the pecking order than what it really is. But Nick Saban's not coming to coach at the University of Maryland.
Someone asked me, would Ken Niumatalolo go to Maryland? No. He's got it too good at Navy, and Navy's a better program.
Right now it is.
Why would he leave Navy to go to Maryland?
No question about that. Maryland, of course, and Ohio State coming up next week. So both Navy and Maryland with big games on the national slate. When we come back, Kirk Cousins, get his name right, K-I-R-K. He was huge for the Redskins today in their win over the Eagles on that final drive of the game. And the Ravens take advantage of some charity from the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. We'll talk about those when we come back on the Gridiron Review. As you know, if you're a Redskins fan, those moments of satisfaction and celebration have been few and far between. My wife and I were out for our anniversary dinner today. We're sitting in the restaurant as the Redskins were driving. Under 2 minutes to go. And, of course, they get a critical penalty when you're, that's the drive right there. This is all over with. But no, not. Kirk Cousins to Pierre Garçon multiple times. And hey, kids, this is what I've always said about recruiting, whether it's basketball, football, or whatever. Pierre Garçon, one of the more reasonable, well-paid wide receivers in the National Football League, he went to Division III Mount Union after starting at a different Division III school before that. And, of course, right now he's the #1 wide receiver for the Redskins with Deshaun Jackson hurt, and he's getting paid pretty handsomely. It's not where you play, but how you play. Kirk Cousins finds him for the game-winning touchdown with 31 seconds to go. Redskins beat the Eagles by a count of 23-20 in what I think has to be one of the most important wins over the last 5 years for the Washington Redskins.
Oh, and you could see it on Jay Gruden and the rest of the coaching staff.
Most enthusiasm I've seen Jay Gruden show. Jay Gruden show in 2 years as a coach.
He knew this was a big one, a division rival, a very hard-fought game. That was a great catch by Garçon, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Laying
multiple
out
times.
with
Multiple times on the drive.
2 defenders sandwiching him. Terrific catch. And the Redskins, they look good. And it's interesting because there's 2 of the last 3 games they've played pretty well on offense and played pretty well of overall football, and they just need to find some consistency. How can you bottle these performances? And because you can't keep backsliding. You can't have a good performance and then show up the next week and play terribly like they did against the Giants. So
if the Saints beat the Cowboys in Sunday Night Football, you've got Washington, Dallas, and the Giants all sitting there tied atop the division.
Right. No, that was a great win, and some big plays by the defense. I think they have 4 sacks today. Ryan Kerrigan was in there. Swaggy Chris Baker, Swaggy P, had a couple sacks as well.
And we had a Trent Murphy sighting as well. He also had a big sack on the last drive against the Eagles as well. And he's been a guy that has been really put on the back burner because of Preston Smith, who also played well, the youngster at the draft pick out of Mississippi State, pressuring Sam Bradford during the course of the game. So at least for another week, the Redskins playing well and getting a good result.
Right, and if they can get some injured guys back, Deshaun Jackson should be back, I would think, next week or the following.
Hopefully. Close.
D'Angelo Hall, is he coming back anytime soon?
Probably another week or 2 with him.
Right, so they got some pretty decent players that are injured right now. So it'd be, if they can hold the fort and get those injured players back, it could be looking up for the Skins.
Meanwhile, Thursday night, the Steelers, Josh Scobie, been a veteran kicker for years, pretty accurate with Jacksonville. Not accurate anymore. He's been cut. They've replaced him. Let's face it.
Deservedly
if he makes any of those field goals, the Steelers probably beat the Ravens on Thursday. It forced Mike Tomlin late in the game to go for it on a 4th down that they didn't get with Michael Vick at the quarterback. To me, the fact, I don't know if I was more disturbed that the Ravens were still in a position to lose to a backup quarterback in a situation like that, or I'm more impressed that given the opportunity, they were able to rally to get the victory. 10 days to get ready for a Cleveland team that's not very good. Now all of a sudden you're looking at 2-3 instead of 0-4, or maybe 1-4 if you beat Cleveland.
And the 2 divisional wins would be huge.
Completely different taste to your season right now, especially with a road win at Pittsburgh.
Right. Hey, they don't ask you how many. They went into Pittsburgh and got a win, and that's all anybody's going to remember. Joe Flacco did get the job done when it counted. Of course, they got a great kicker. It seems to always come through when they need him. Made the kick to send it into overtime. Questionable coaching on both sides. A couple 4th down calls that, and I don't question going for it on 4th down. I question the calls. You hand it off to a slow tight end. I'm not quite sure what the Ravens are thinking there. Joe Flacco does not hit the right hole on a quarterback sneak, and then. How about Pittsburgh? They've got some key 3rd and 4th downs, and they got Le'Veon Bell. They don't use him. They don't give him the ball. So it wasn't exactly a magnificent coaching job on either side, but a win's a win. Ravens got some issues, though. Michael Campanaro, young wide receiver who scored a touchdown in that game, had a couple big catches, done for the year. Steve Smith, senior. We have to say senior now, Pete.
No, you don't.
Steve Smith.
His son's not on the team.
Something is wrong with his back. They won't tell us what. They are refuting reports that it was broken ribs or broken
back.
Right. But he's not playing against Cleveland. I know that. They had to go out and get a new receiver. Who is it? Chris Givens
from the Rams.
Right, who was falling down the depth chart at a rapid rate for the Rams. But you know what? When you're the Ravens, you're desperate. They were down to nothing for weapons for Joe Flacco to throw to.
Give Kamar Aiken a lot of credit. He made some critical catches late in that game.
Well, Kamar Aiken's going to have to step up way more than that.
Yeah.
Going forward.
No question.
He's now the #1 receiver at this point.
At least for a couple of weeks he will be. And Steve Smith, ultimate competitor, and he wasn't real happy with the hit Mike Mitchell put on him, and then his former Carolina Panther teammate, had a little yap session with him there, and I don't think Steve was very fond of that as well. You just hope now that he can be a little bit of a teacher for those guys in that meeting room, because they're going to need some leadership there without him on the field.
Well, and another thing that's important for the Ravens as you move forward, especially as we mentioned about this receiver situation, Justin Forsett finally decided to show up for the season. They finally ran the ball. Looks like they got back to some of those zone running schemes that Gary Kubiak had installed. And the first time all year that Justin Forsett got downhill and did some damage, he had a very good game. Couple big long runs that were crucial. So, because that may be what you got to hang your hat on here until you can get some receiver help back. Crockett Gilmore, that's another guy, another weapon. The tight end Crockett Gilmore didn't play and may not play again next week. Joe Flacco is just seeing one by one every single passing weapon go down. So you may need to rely on Justin Forsett in the running game a little bit.
And the problem is your defense is not good enough to win the game 12-6 for you now,
not like it used to be. Nope.
Yeah, you could kick 4 field goals and win a game back in the day. But hey, they picked up a victory on Thursday night on the road. Another one coming up with Cleveland coming up this week. That'll do it for our program this week. As always, we appreciate you watching, and you can catch us. Best time in my mind, especially if you're a high schooler, Thursday night, 8 o'clock. Just dial in Thursday night, 8 o'clock. It's also available online as well. Go to the Anne Arundel County Recreation and Parks page as well as YouTube, and you can catch our show via that way anytime on demand, because that's the way our lives are now.
That's right.
We want stuff on demand when we want it right now. That's how you can do that. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week with another edition of the Gridiron Review.